keep it in your presence. That's why mine's got a thumb
Well,
print to go
they
through.
do that to my family. I made
We may have to take the thumb.
Okay.
So,
That could be the max.
oh yeah,
Right.
but my brother's name is.
I think that's a good idea, right?
Right? Good while we had everybody together.
For a year.
Okay. I didn't know that.
But, I mean, they call him Rod, majority of people call him Rod because that is more the English or the American way. But it's Scottish.
All right. Are we ready? Yes. Do I have the thumbs up? All right. There's and what I'm going to do, as opposed to introducing everyone, if we'll just go around the table, speak to who we are and who we're with for the record. And I'll start. My name is Vanessa Carasone, Mayor of the City of Northport. And
I'm Marty Black, and I'm calling to order the West Villages Improvement District half of the meeting.
Jonathan Johnson, Hopping Green and Sam's counsel to the West Villages District.
Amber Slayton, City Attorney for the City of Northport.
Pete Bear, City Manager, City of Northport.
Todd Woodruska, I'm the District Manager for the West Villages Improvement District.
Chris Hanks, City of Northport.
Jill Luke, Commissioner, City, Northport.
Malcolm Crawl, the Board of Supervisors for West Villages.
Debbie McDowell, Commissioner from the City of Northport.
Cindy Yates, Vice Mayor of the City of Northport.
David Russo, I'm on the West Villages Improvement Board.
thank you all for coming. This is awesome. I think we need to do this on an annual basis. Now, forgive me because I will not remember any of your name, just so you know. But if anyone from the public would like to make a public comment, there are these wonderful manila-looking comment cards that you can fill out, and we will take that in order. So if I would tell everyone in here that you need to put your phones either on silent or vibrate, and if they're not, then you will be buying dinner today. And if you would all stand for the pledge with me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Do we have any general public comment cards? All right, so if JJ Cooley or Corley, thank you. Actually, you wanted to discuss the bridge on 4A. Did you want to wait till that discussion comes up, or?
I can do it just as easily right now.
Go ahead, you're up then.
My name is JJ Coley. I'm from Grand Paradiso. We've had numerous discussions with some of our residents about this fantasy bridge over 41 for pedestrians. It'd be ludicrous to spend any kind of money to put a bridge over 41 for pedestrians to walk on. We don't even walk to the clubhouse. We drive our cars, okay? When you put in that Publix over there, do you think we're gonna walk over, buy our groceries, and walk back across 41? Not in your lifetime, all right? To even entertain that idea is ludicrous. We don't drive, we drive everywhere, all right? We're a senior citizen community for the most part, and we don't like to walk. I ride a bike. Please, let's not build a bridge. It's crazy.
JJ, what part of New York you from?
I was born in Brooklyn,
Yep, there you go.
raised in Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, wow. Thanks for coming. Next is Victor Dobrin.
Victor Dobrin, Grand Paradiso. Here's the bridge between Commission and
That's right.
West Villages Port. So I truly believe that we have to consider seriously only those projects which are sustainable, can be funded, and can get other funding not only on the shoulder of homeowners. Most of us, not like me, on fixed income, so we try to conserve, not to expand. But as my neighbor has underlined, we see golf carts, driving on our sidewalks and stuff like that. We don't need a madness over the US 41 either. So I think it's sensible to do only what is within our means. We have to live within our means. So that's the message I like to convey from me as a person, but I know that many of others, without ever considering that I represent the voice of everybody, by no means. But I'm telling you sincerely what I believe we can do as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to address? The first one is you.
First one's me.
It's all you. Oh, it's us?
First one's Peter.
Hey, look, I'm just here for, giggles.
Shower coming in.
Yeah, thank you for showering me on my, yeah.
Commissioner McDowell and I have been having for quite some time of what it would take to put a bridge over 41. It's, I know that Commissioner McDowell asked me, in reference to the one that's in Venice that's part of the Legacy Trail bridge that was put up there. What I have been able to find out is that one, and I don't remember if Mr. Black was there at the time that was put in or not. Those were ARA funds, which was the wonderful grant time period that came in quite a while ago. It came with lovely strings that came attached to them. We actually used it for part of Sumter. That was put in there, and my understanding it was managed mostly by Sarasota County more so than the city. It was a massive undertaking. Mr. Black can probably explain more of that since he was there at the time actually working at the city, because it is a massive bridge. If that's the will of the commission, we can look more into it. But that was mostly how they funded that one. It was an ARA project. I was able to eventually get the information on how that was funded. So those were federal dollars.
Perhaps I could add a little bit
Please.
more information.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually discussed at our district board meetings, we've had comments from residents. And one of the things that we've expressed is that, one, we don't have the money as a district, and really what we heard loud and clear from the residents is don't assess us for it. We did ask the district engineer to look at the costs, and to do a bridge across 41, you have to design it and build it by FDOT as if the 6 lanes of 41 are in place. So it's not a simple undertaking. Our belief, I'm going from memory, that was somewhere around $40 million for construction costs.
Sounds about right.
And that did not include condemning and acquiring the property so that you could put in the handicap ramps or the landing spot for the bridge, because the district doesn't own property on either side of 41 that would line up. It's privately owned either by the developers or by homeowners associations that effectively we'd either have to get them to agree to dedicate, or we'd have to work with the city and the county to condemn property, and that would certainly add to the cost. So as an alternative, we do know that there are several traffic lights, and later on I'll brief everyone on where we are with the signalization and road improvements. Just as you have at Sumter now and other locations in the city where you cross 41, you've got signalized intersections with pedestrian walkways. I drive this corridor every day and see people crossing either by bike or by pedestrian. We believe once the light's in, that'll provide an adequate safe measure. In addition, particularly for those residents in Grand Paradiso and Renaissance, they will be able to access West Villages Parkway, and because of the speed limit, if they have a licensed electric vehicle, whether you want to call electric golf, but their golf cart or pieces like that, it's got to meet state licensing requirements and insurance requirements. If an individual has one of those, it can drive on West Villages Parkway, and then when the light changes, come across to the future stadium and shopping center in downtown. So we think that's the cost-effective, safe alternative, as opposed to spending resources and time and exercising up folks about what it might cost to own, and then someone has to maintain it. It's not just the construction cost, but what it costs to maintain it over time. So we took a hard look at it when it came up about 6 months ago, as the district actually looked at some of the costs, and really with some discussion with residents at the meeting, thought it would be better to quickly get a safe light in, And we expect to have that actually in place by the end of the year at West Villages and 41. So that's an update from what we've been working on and some of the responses we've gotten from residents.
Excellent.
Thank you for that update, I appreciate it.
Next up for discussion is, just quickly, anyone else have anything to add on that particular subject before we move on? No?
Thank you for
Okay.
looking into it, though.
Yeah.
I'm very glad to hear, the
Especially
considerations of it.
numbering the cost of it and what's all involved in it, so I do appreciate that.
And
I appreciate the practicality of the residents also. I mean, looking at it from all angles and whether it's feasible or should even be viewed. Excellent deduction.
let me ask you something. If you were to put a golf cart bridge, not necessarily a traffic vehicle type bridge, would it have the same requirements? Because that's been what has been generally asked of me is, can we get a golf cart / walk bridge?
So if you make it wide enough for a golf cart to travel on, it's got to hold the weight across the entire length. That's what we asked the engineer to design. So it would be both for pedestrians and, I'll call them lightweight vehicles. I mean, obviously, you're not designing something for a pickup truck or garbage truck, but if you can drive a small vehicle across, it's got to be safe. And we don't want to have happen what happened over on the East Coast where we had a collapse. So it's that expensive, primarily because of the length across 41.
The length, okay.
You got
That makes
6
sense.
lanes, that's the.
Hold that
Yeah.
span.
Hold the span.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious if there was a difference.
I thought this was for a pedestrian / golf cart bridge.
That's what the cost that we,
For the 40 million,
I
was
was
it pedestrian /
Trying
golf
to
cart?
make sure that, because when you were talking about having the access to the bridge and having to get other properties, that kind of sounds more like a vehicle bridge versus but I guess it's all required, good old
you
FDOT.
got to have the ramps, to be able to drive an
Right.
electric vehicle up a certain incline, and they don't get to just get in an elevator like a person does.
Right, right.
And then an elevator actually costs more to maintain and operate. So we looked at that option, and it's a long ramp to go up. You just look at the one at 41 and the trail. The reason the trail works is the ramp runs down the length of the trail. So they're not going parallel. If we were to do it, we'd have to run parallel to 41, which means we've got to condemn more property. Otherwise, you'd be going in and disrupting existing roads or homes, both in Island Walk and Grand Paradiso, or if you brought it further down, frankly, vacant properties that's developed and it's got commercial designations on it, it's expensive to condemn.
Have you considered a Chinook that you can pull up on and just fly them over?
No, we're not going to look at that.
Or a drone, just put them on a drone.
That's a drone.
We think
Massive
the at-grade crossing, once we looked at the cost and had that discussion at the meetings, I think the general consensus, I mean, you always have a few folks that say, well, just have somebody else pay for it. Well, we know in West Villages, even if someone else buys it,
You're still paying for it.
we're still paying to
Yeah.
operate and maintain it for the life of the project,
Yeah.
and that adds up over time.
You need better leverage over Mexico, that's the problem.
The next subject is update regarding cell tower.
Oh,
Thank you to the city
Love
first,
the
let's say that.
results,
So, yeah.
loved it.
I think obviously the end result is it's not happening. We've made them aware of all of the requirements that would be from the city's perspective. We've sent emails to all of the residents that contacted the city as well. And my understanding from Mr. Black is that the entity that was going to put it in has changed their mind as well. So it's for all intents and purposes, we'll just say this is a dead project at this point.
We're talking about the proposed tower at the community park in Grand Paradiso.
Oh, okay. Would there be a proposed cell tower maybe at the Brave Stadium? I know that service is an issue in that particular area.
And actually, what we've come to find out from the providers is they're looking for an alternate location because the rent is going up on the big tower at
Gotcha.
River Road 41.
Right.
So that's, they're all looking for a
That's
cheaper
why,
thing.
okay. That
We
makes
did
sense.
look at the stadium opportunity.
Right.
We have already poured all the foundations for the lights. So it would actually cause us to stop the stadium construction to try to do that. So we've had some discussions with planning staff at alternate locations along that corridor. So we're going to continue to work closely to see what some other locations be. And frankly, I talked earlier today with some residents, there's a couple pieces right near the existing tower.
Right.
It's there, and if another tower is going to go in that's half that height or somewhere around there, it almost seems to make sense. That would be more appropriate. There's no residences there today. It's near the wastewater treatment plant. There might be locations at the county fire station or by the state college that aren't in a residential neighborhood or even in future commercial areas in West Villages that make more sense than putting it in neighborhoods.
Oh,
So-
yeah, absolutely.
Why is it they continue to look at these towers when,
Thank
when
you.
lately
I was-
you've been hearing
I was just gonna
about
say
these
that.
macro transistors and things
Yeah.
like that, that with line of sight, you can just put on a lamp post,
Mm-hmm.
and then, is that just not cost effective compared to?
So not all of 41 doesn't have lights on it.
Well,
No,
I
right
was
in the
thinking out towards the
stadium.
Brave
Yeah, the
Stadium, out
stadium.
in the.
And we've got the
in
decorative hook lights,
Right,
which
Probably wouldn't.
they may or may not work, but we haven't had anybody approach us either on that.
right.
Right, well, I just didn't know, because it's always about the tower, and I know they've been really pushing legislatively about these macros and,
Yeah,
these things. So
micro
I don't know why
towers.
they're constantly,
Well,
Not only that, they have different types of towers now. They can have towers that look like trees. They have towers that go on top of buildings that are aesthetically pleasing. I mean, there's so many different varieties, but it all depends on the person wanting to put the tower in, so.
well, again,
Yeah.
on behalf of the district, I know a lot of the residents were relieved. I want to thank particularly the planning staff that helped work through those issues with us when it first came to light, and we think it's been a very positive and good example of cooperation.
Definitely.
Thank you, sir. We have two public comment cards on that particular subject. First is Victor Dobrin, and then our New Yorker, Mr. Corley.
Victor Dobrin, Grand Paradiso. I want to take a moment to thank to all the commissioners who were receptive to our call to respect our community, as that lot specifically was dedicated for a common usage. Prior with the VDDP, Village Development Pattern Plan, on file with the city, it showed clearly what the destination. I want to thank City Manager Peter Lear being very responsive and very timely with his work with the departments, because it was helpful to us to state our will. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a good thing you live in Northport, huh?
Part of Florida, which is cold.
For the record, I guess J.J. Corley from Grand Paradiso. I want to thank Deb here. She was kind enough to meet with me. I'm president of the HOA for the Villas Association. Deb was kind enough to meet with me and one of my villa owners regarding that tower. She was very receptive to our complaints and concerns. The tower that was going to be placed in, I don't think is advanced enough for what's coming. All right, what's coming is what they call G5.
Yep.
All right, G5 is a very strong signal,
That's the microphone.
carries a lot of information, can do a lot of things. However, it can't broadcast very far. It's my understanding that Lakewood Ranch is doing it through streetlights, as you mentioned. And they've got those repeaters going up on their streetlights to provide, so that they're going to be ready for the future signal of G5. Now, undoubtedly, at some point in time, that's going to come down here too. I mean, it just stands to reason. We're not going to, what's your total build-out of residents down here, 60,000, when they're all factored down? Not that I'm going to be around to see it,
Sure you will.
Keep going.
you know, but, you know, it's going to, the need is going to come to where you're going to have to be able to handle this G5 capability. You know, so at some point in time, the commission, West Village Improvement District, is going to have to kind of address that issue. Maybe that is something that should be looked in, being proactive, so when the time comes around that you're going to need it, we can do it in such a manner that Mr. Shaughnessy and myself and Mr. Dobbin here don't have to start raising the flag to get the troops out in a timely fashion. We don't mean to be argumentative. We are just very concerned about our community. Please don't take affront when we do the petitions and everything, and when we threaten to picket. All right? It's just that we are very concerned about our community. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. What is our build-out, by the way? our
Well, I think she's
latest
referring
estimate?
more to the West Village.
Oh, okay, I was
Cindy's
gonna
build,
say-
That's gonna be closer to 250.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, before we left that subject, because we talked about the small cell tower, and the state has been very restrictive. We passed what we could, as far as the ability to control the placement of those, which is extremely limited. The state took that out of our hands. We lost home rule on that one.
Yep.
So when those towers start going in on streetlights, we have already done what we were able to do. And this commission, we had many meetings on it, and we did what we could.
Poor Nicole.
And, yes, poor Nicole, our planning staff.
You say micro tower and her
Mostly the
hair's
only
like
thing we
falling
can do
out.
is sit, right?
Yeah, we can
Most of
charge
what we
a
can
very
do.
small fee.
Yeah.
And basically make sure that they're as pretty as possible,
Yeah,
but
We can't stop them.
we can't stop them from coming in. And so I wanted to get you all that information now so that when it happens, I know that you guys also contacted the county and they kind of shared some of that. But that was a state law that came in, and you'll hear this commission constantly talk about fighting for home rule.
Yep.
That was a fight we lost.
But I will tell you, if in November Commissioner Yates wins, you know right where to find her.
that's right.
There's your state legislature.
There
right
you go. What were you gonna say,
I
Commissioner
was gonna
McDowell?
say, but I thought that G5 didn't apply to the HOAs and stuff. I thought
It
it
doesn't currently,
doesn't currently,
right.
but that may change.
But that again would not be us.
Exactly.
Right, that's
Like,
the
gonna be up
state.
to-
And we'll do what we can, but
Guys are
it's, the
protected.
state made that
For now.
extremely limited on what local governments can do.
Right. Okay, do you have anything to add to that, Mr. Black? Any other folks on the board here? No? All right, I guess we move on to the status of city planning and development for the 63-acre park located on River Road. I don't know what kind of status we can provide, since we kind of stopped this conversation before we could have this conversation last budget.
Well, this was put on at the district, I'm sure what they're looking for is where we are on the status, and
Hey!
Tricia, who I have to apologize to, because she asked me if she was going to have to be here, I said no, and then I changed my mind, so, as I can tell, and you all can't, she went home from sometime this morning and now, and changed.
I was ready to do park inspections. I was all ready to go out
I
today,
told her she
so
didn't have to, she looked very park employee-like,
Yeah.
I was ready.
She looks very pretty.
so
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
going to apologize to her publicly for my change of heart.
That's so sweet of you. You don't ever apologize to us. What the heck?
I do apologize to some of the commissioners.
Yeah, no, just not me.
Some of them.
Well, for the record, Tricia Wisner, Parks and Recreation Manager for the City of Northport. As a quick overview, the principles of agreement said that the 63-acre park, and it was transferred via special warranty deed to Northport March 24th, 2009. And just for anyone who's not familiar with the location, the red outline is the boundary of the City of Northport. The green rectangle is the park, and the gold star is where the Atlanta Braves Stadium is being built. Urban Resource Group, which is a division of Kinley Horn, won an award for a concept plan for this site. And this is the overview of Concept C, which is the award-winning plan.
You guys can see this award actually on display in the entrance to the commission offices next door.
We were just talking.
Parks and Recreation completed a master plan, which was adopted in 2018, earlier this year. And the master plan did evaluate the concept plan for this park, and it did find that the concept plan fits with the long-range vision for the park strategy. The property appraiser current data shows that 2,439 homes have been issued certificates of occupancy as of 2017. And for fiscal year 19, Parks submitted a budget request CIP form, as you can see. So we're looking for funding in 2019 and 20 for plan, design, and engineering, and potential construction in 2012.
You mean,
I'm sorry.
not 2012.
That's,
2020.
That would have been
sorry, should have been
21.
21,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
We're backwards.
And Mayor, that's what you were talking about, that's actually what we removed,
Correct, yes.
our first budget.
CIP, yep. So I think that this would be a great time that we discuss this particular areas. One of the things that I and Marty have discussed privately that we didn't want to, bring up until we had an actual board together was some sort of workforce housing that's going to be needed for that area, specifically because the Brave Stadium will be there, and there'll be all those parcels that will need employees. And so we kind of looked at this 63-acre park, and while we don't want to take away the park, there is a park here, but is there really a need for the baseball fields? Because there's a stadium across the street that we have use of those what are they called? The practice fields. So maybe maybe you can go into more of the.
Let me be fully transparent. I was
Yeah.
actually one of the project planners on this design when I worked with Kinley Horn. So if you go back and read the documents, you'll find my name on it.
So you won the award, is that what you're saying?
So myself, Bill Waddell, and a few
Hey.
others. So we were doing work when I was at Kinley Horn a number of
Yeah.
years ago, and this was our design.
And this was obviously before anybody knew or envisioned the
Braves?
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Training.
Well,
This was part of that this is
Yeah.
when we developed the district, and it was kind of
It goes
give
back
and
more than
take.
10 years.
Yeah.
And I think the other aspect is
Don't
the
be
whole
dating me.
the whole front part of this was going to be a swimming pool, which you guys
Right.
are now
That's right.
building elsewhere.
Mhm.
And frankly, most of the communities in West Villages, talking about not duplicating things, they have clubhouses with community pools. That was the discussion the mayor and I had, is that she had been getting inquiries, and I know all of you do, is what else is being done for rental housing, workforce rental housing components. There is a restrictive covenant on this property that deals with its use for public recreation. I, for one, think there's still a need, and, I'm the planner by background, some back portion of this still has to be a park, green space. But whether or not there may be a potential to look at this site for some type of workforce rental, public-private partnership that the city might consider. Obviously, there are legal issues that deal with the restrictive covenants and all those other aspects, but clearly the city doesn't need to build a pool, you just voted to build one. So having two seems a little difficult, and clearly we don't think we need pools to serve residents in the district, because we either have them in their backyards or as part of the community clubhouses. And since we now have the stadium and we have the open fields, not sure we need the ball fields, particularly when you look at the Englewood Sports Complex
I was just gonna say
in
that.
combination with the Brave Stadium. So maybe there's an alternate way to look at this design and go forward, but I think there's some legal research on can the restriction be modified, removed, what does that take, and then where to go from there. I know from having done the planning work, we all have the design in front of us, there's a large wetland in the back, and then all that green space in the back really is perfect for walks and nature trails and the preservation of a canopy and those aspects. Really, the area up in front that was going to be the pool and the ball fields is the most developable area. So perhaps there's a way to look at this longer term, if it's legal, one of those impediments to look at something that then might need a different public deed.
And I believe it's close to water that would we could enhance that whole park water project that we're working on, that you could maybe do something like a boat lift or something to that extent. So we wouldn't lose a park aspect of it, but you could do that where you wouldn't disrupt the property, because I believe it's more to the eastern side of that property. It's like the northeastern side.
Yeah, it's wet, that
Right,
northeast corner.
so, there's a lot you can do with it, but this was supposed to be an aquatic center, that's what that was, and, another baseball field, but,
We thought it'd be good at least to open it up to hear from the rest of the commission. and
yeah.
See what the public might think about other opportunities.
I know the other day you and I had talked about workforce housing too.
Oh,
It's on everybody's mind right
It
now.
is.
So, that's.
Well, it's just so hard to find anything even remotely in this area.
12+% increase in property values.
Yeah.
you're going to price people out of the market.
Well, and that's what we're doing. We are literally pricing people out of the market. My daily complaint is that you can't find a home here that's under $1,500 a month, and you can't find an apartment here that's under $1,000 a month, and that's a 2-bedroom, mind you. And the bigger problem is we don't have enough stock. There is a good 8 months where that stock is completely filled and nobody has the availability to get into anything, even if they can afford the $1,500 a month. So we're in desperate need here.
Demand
Desperate need.
really outweighs the supply, for sure.
So maybe we'll go down the line. Commissioner McDowell, what are your thoughts?
Well, I got a few questions first, only because.
By all means.
I wasn't here when this was all taking place, and I'm not familiar with the special warranty deed, what all that means. Who legally owns this property?
City.
The city owns the property?
But it was transferred to the city with
Right.
restrictions, I believe. This all occurred way back when the principals agreement happened for the West Villages. And that's what Mr. Black was talking about, all the legal loopholes that'll have to be jumped through. The principles, we've talked about modifying them, whether it be as a whole or piece by piece anyway. That's one of the loopholes we'd have to jump through, figure out. I'm not gonna sit here, I wasn't here in 2008 or 6, whenever this was transferred. Nor am I the attorney, she's sitting over there, and she wasn't here then either. So to know what restrictions that came with and how we can overcome them.
I have to be honest, I didn't know that there were restrictions on it until Mr. Black told me. Because I don't remember us
Who transferred it?
approving it with the restrictions. I thought it was fourth quarter.
I think it came through the district.
Probably went through the district.
Really?
Yeah, fourth quarter, at least from what I looked at, when the issue first came up, I went back, this is just in the last couple of months, the mayor reached out and we had a meeting, I went back and looked, and it appears that the property went from fourth quarter properties to the district, and then from the district to the city.
So, but those restrictions are only as strong as the two parties agree to the restrictions, right?
I don't know. We haven't asked legal counsel to look at it, and
Before we had a whole bunch of legal research done on it, we want to know if there was an appetite for it at all
Exactly.
anyway. Because if the commission was to say, no, we're not interested, or the district would say we're not interested in it, we're not going to throw the money away. We just want to.
Really, knowing that the city owns it and not knowing what those restrictions are, if we were to do something with housing, I would like it to be not at market rate, because there's so many at market rate housing going on that we really need to have it not at market. We need to have it.
Workforce.
Well,
Yeah.
but again, it depends who you're talking to, what that definition means. No, that's true. So.
we're not, at least from my perspective,
Yeah,
talking to the
we've
mayor,
discussed
her
this
discussion
very-
wasn't,
Yeah.
it would be something that would be regulated by the city as the landowner, so that you could limit income levels, so that it would actually be open and not be market.
So it would
rates.
not be affordable housing, like a homeless initiative to bring in folks that, the low-income housing. It wouldn't be that.
It's not
Right,
subsidized.
it's not subsidized. We're talking about something that will go underneath the percentage threshold of what our average market rate is. So say that the average market of a rental home is, or the apartments, because probably apartments would be best. But let's just say there's apartments there, and the average rental for apartments in the geographic area is $1,000 for a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. Then we could set policy that all the rates in that particular apartment building would be 30% lower, 50% lower, 20% lower, and then.
Who would be the owner of the apartment complex?
Well, there's a lot of,
factors I would need
right. And that's only one way. I mean, you could
I don't
also.
think anyone's looking for
Right.
direction or decision,
Right.
but more, do we want to have both groups look at what would need to be done if we wanted to pursue this?
Because there's a lot of private entities out there that do this for a living, and we could be as basic as, we will lease you the property for 100 years at X amount of dollars, as long as you follow these covenants, And, I mean, it could be as simple as that.
But see, those covenants, to Commissioner Hanks' point, those covenants and restrictions and everything are as only good as those two boards.
Right,
So,
but, you know.
we would have to
that's-
make sure that everybody is protected and that
Yeah,
the intent
absolutely.
is followed for, so.
Forever,
Right, I
right,
think
and
that's what-
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for, is whether or not we even want to remotely look at something, whether or not the
Exactly.
district even remotely wants to look at something.
Right.
Otherwise, what's the point of even discussing it?
Right,
Yep.
You
I
know,
mean,
if-
there are
it's not-
financial issues here, there are
Right.
legal issues.
right.
You know, for one, I think, at least for me personally, there needs to be at least some parkland out here. When the
Absolutely.
land's appropriate, there is a need for that type of
If you're gonna
use.
be putting housing there, you would want to have some kind of recreation there anyways.
Right.
Because mostly it's gonna be families. I mean, let's face it, the folks that are going to work in this general area is going to be families. And so that's kind of what,
I just know that the city's probably not going to build what was designed.
oh, no.
So if that's not the case,
Especially
then what
to
are
the
the other
magnitude
options?
of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Especially to the magnitude of the award-winning picture.
Take the award down.
Yeah,
This was actually done at the same time the 2010 Aquatic Center was developed, so it was kind of all part and parcel of the master plan.
I would definitely be open to hearing more, learning more, discussing more about what we could do on here with the reservations that I've already expressed.
And with park land involved, right?
You've got a huge wetland, you may as well take advantage of it too.
Right.
Does West Villages control the covenants on this?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I don't know if the district controls it or if
We'd have to
Thomas
look
may
back and
control it.
see
We'd have to
what-
look.
What was in the conveyance from the developer to the district, and then we may have just mirrored what went from what we got, so we'd have to look.
Yeah. I think that's before we even spend any time.
Yeah, that's
Let's-
the first thing
let's-
we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's step one, but we didn't want to go forward and look at any of that without the commission and the district's board, you know, actually saying this is a
Having an
viable
interest.
option. Because if it's not, then it just sits there, you know? So, Commissioner Luke?
Definitely interested in looking at the legality of it and what the ins and outs would be. Definitely like half of it still being reserved for your nature, your recreation, the other half of it, if it's amenable to everybody for affordable housing or whatever type of project, looking at that going forward. But getting the answers first
Oh,
before
absolutely.
there's anything put together.
Commissioner Hanks? Oh, look at you. I love how you're just short, sweet, to the point. Nothing? Yeah, okay.
I'm not a policymaker.
Yeah, Ms. Slayton, do you have anything you want to offer to this conversation? Can you speak today?
A little more than before.
Okay.
We would have to do the research into the conveyances.
Okay, and,
We'll follow up.
okay,
Yeah, I think from the board's perspective, we at least wanted to talk about it publicly, since I know that the city had been getting unsolicited inquiries about where you could put workforce housing.
yeah.
On behalf of the board, we were interested in what was going on with the park. The mayor had mentioned there were other locations that the city had owned, that there were people coming in and asking. I said, well, then why don't we bring this to both boards and say, one, I don't know the legalities of it. If there's no interest, then we leave it alone. If the city was programming to build a park here next year, then so be it. But if you're not going to build this or something like it, then I think having a joint discussion going forward after we have administrative staff and legal staff look at it was where I was. Let's see what the facts are before we make any decisions. But we didn't know as the district what your plans were as the city until we got here today. So
And you, sir?
I agree with Mr. Black.
Wow, did he pay for you?
I was just going to say that.
You guys related?
He's so eloquent.
All right. Vice Mayor?
I think it makes all the sense in the world when we look at, just how things change. I think it's very smart planning, smart growth for us to look at, repurposing and maximizing the best use out of properties. And there's definitely going to be a need for workforce housing. senior housing, veteran housing.
Right,
There's just many needs for those. And certainly with the Braves spring training facility, that really changed a whole lot as far as the dynamics. But I think in a positive way that we're able to actually repurpose and add other things that before maybe weren't necessarily available. A couple of things, so you probably don't have the answers now, but as we're looking for the due diligence on this, that covenant, does it restrict the ownership of that property? In other words, does the entirety of this parcel need to stay in the public ownership?
So would it prevent us from doing a land lease, is what you're saying?
Or even
Lease.
sales.
I'm talking actual ownership. So in other words, if we truly wanted a more proprietary, business, private, we don't run housing.
No.
So would it make sense to have a park component to this, but basically we stay in that public ownership and have the public-private partnership sort of, where you're selling that parcel for that specific purpose, and that would be a covenant on that land. So it's just an idea of, not keeping something in public ownership that doesn't necessarily work as good in public ownership. So
And that's a great
It's a great
comment.
question, but I think that anytime we've ever done something where there's been a land transfer, there's always a reverter clause that says if you sell that piece of parcel to someone else, you lose it.
Right,
So,
exactly, and that's what
yeah.
I'm saying would be in there. What I'm saying is, as they're looking at the covenant, to look at this,
Right,
to see,
to make sure.
so that we give ourselves the maximum
Cover our-
opportunity to work with some of these entities that are out there that are willing to do it.
And I'm a carpetbagger. I came
Yeah, you
from
did.
the city of Venice, right? So we'll call it a carpetbagger from there. I worked cooperatively when I was city manager in Venice with Habitat for South Sarasota County. And we, as the city, had a piece of property that originally we were going to use as a fire station and then didn't need it. We looked at the restrictions. We could change use, but we couldn't dispose of the property other than for public purpose. So we ended up doing a long-term lease with Habitat for Humanity, and it took, I think, 8 or 10 years, and eventually the city was able to actually transfer ownership, I believe, to Habitat, but it took some time and some other pieces. So
Exactly.
I'm familiar with those kinds of issues, but again, after the mayor and I met, kind of anticipation of us doing a joint meeting, and that this is one of the issues, I said, let's bring it to the table. We're not going to ask the attorneys to do a bunch of research or staff until we put it out on the table and hear what everyone's thoughts were.
Just, it's something
But it's a
that
good
you get
question,
out
it's a good
there.
point.
Thank you.
The other thing that I think also needs to be looked at is from the perspective of the city's comp plan. We have requirements, as our population is increasing, for every 1,000 people, we need 10 acres. And that's combined with the conservation, the parkland use, as well as the open space that makes up that 10 acres. So when this originally was
We've got
conveyed.
8,000 more people at the stadium site, right? Because it's a community park.
Not to mention, we didn't have the Myakkahatchee, or the Myakka
Yeah.
Forest. So that took away from that acreage needed
Right.
for parkland.
Well, all I'm saying, and we just did that comp plan update as well, and that's the criteria. So at the time that this 63-acre park was actually conveyed, I'm sure they looked at those analysis to see what the need would be for the build-out of this area. And so
Not really.
I'm going to say that staff, I'm sure,
I was there.
would have reviewed to make sure that, because for that whole area, even as the developer is developing, they have to make sure that they are keeping and maintaining those requirements.
Let me just tell you how this all came about. The property was kind of a horse trade, okay? West Villages, which at the time was Fourth Quarter, our negotiations took place with Fourth Quarter, not West Villages. And the idea was they were going to give us this property, and it was the city who said, why don't we make it a park? It wasn't because there was a need for it. And so we just didn't really know what else to do with it, I guess, because we never saw putting services on that piece of property because West Villages had already given us the property for those services that we were going to put there. So it wasn't that there was a need and then it turned into a park because of the need. It was more like there's 63 acres. What do you want to do with it? We're going to make it a park. That's how that went down.
And, you know, and all part of that, obviously, I mean, I wasn't here at the time, but, you know, sometimes there are those negotiations that happen. So if a developer wants to maximize the use and mixed use of their area that they're going to stay in ownership and whatever, and there's a requirement on them, but they want to maximize that maybe possibly this 63 acres actually sort of transferred and counted
to their requirements.
Correct.
I see what you're saying.
So like I said, it's
I
just
see what
something,
you're saying.
again, I'm just trying to say that.
Do you understand? So in other words, is there a requirement on West Village District to have a certain percentage of parkland, and is this added into it through that percentage?
Originally counted toward
right,
that,
counted
yeah.
toward it. That makes sense. I see what you're saying.
And the other thing is that when we look at, and I'm just thinking from a planning perspective, which I know Marty can appreciate, but having a land use of park is different than having, the impacts are different than having bricks and mortar, you know, from obviously transportation issues, which we have already with River Road, and especially with all that's going on, to not be able to, I think, accomplish as much as we wanted to in the short period of time. So, and I think this is a need that if we can do this, it needs to be done sooner than later. Because aside from families, we are having a lot of retirees and the baby boomers. I mean, the percentage of the retirees coming down here is actually accelerating. So, you know, I just want to make sure that changing that land use, what are the dynamics of that as far as stormwater, as far as things like that, just because there is such a big difference between open ball fields versus the housing unit. So I just wanted to share just some of the things that I was thinking about, that as the due diligence is being done, you know, those are probably some things that, of course, I don't know if I'll still be here by the time you guys get to that, but just to share those concerns.
Thank you, and I'm pretty certain those are all kind of common sense things that would be brought up through the planning process, and again, we have so much legwork that needs to be done first before we even get to those more finite details that we'll see. Anyways, it sounds like
points for due diligence, though.
Yeah, but that
first one I thought of also.
Anyways, if anyone in the public wants to come up and comment on this, I know, but just anyone who has not filled out a card, by all means, please do. So Kevin Shaughnessy, is that close?
That's how they say it in Ireland, actually, but I call it Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy. I guess I'm a little surprised that we haven't considered housing for the stadium workers until this point, unless I missed something. Have we already done it as part of our analysis for building the stadium?
When you're finished, we'll go ahead and answer those questions.
The other is, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, with a lot of apartment buildings.
Another one.
Yes, ma'am. Proudly born in Brooklyn, New York. The son of a widow with 5 kids at the age of 24, so
God bless.
I understand the need for affordable housing, by all means. My caution would be is to make sure that we have the community engaged. My concern is the density and the type of housing. I've lived in and near quote-unquote public housing and private housing, and it can be done very nicely, or it can be an absolute horror story. And my fear is we don't want to have a horror story. We want to have something that is pleasing to the communities in the surrounding area. My other concern is from a park perspective, there's an awful lot of housing going up in that area. There's an awful lot of housing there now and more to come. And I know there was a comment earlier about a lot of senior citizens in Grand Paradiso. There's a lot of young families in Grand Paradiso. And I hear a common complaint from them, even as of late, that there's really no ballpark for them to go to play a pickup game. You know, and you know, I know the stadium is there, but the likelihood of, you know, 5 Pee-wee leagues, you know, running into the stadium to play ball is probably minimized. So we need to consider, as we look at this, the density and the type of housing. And again, I'm not against affordable housing. People need to be able to live in communities, and not everybody can buy a nice house. And we can help them where we can, but we have to do it intelligently. And we have to do it so it's not at the expense of people that have probably spent their life savings, in some cases, for their retirement homes, and they need to worry about, you know, what's going next door. And that's not my backyard statement. I'm not that kind of a guy, but I just caution that the community gets involved, that we have a strong say in what's happening in the community around us. I'm sure you'll welcome that. And I think forward thinking is appropriate, and I applaud that you're doing that. We just need to be careful in how we approach things and look at the long-term picture. It's my only comment. Thank you.
And while the other speaker comes up and hands his card in, just so you know, that was absolutely a top priority when Mr. Black and I had met and discussed it. That's why we wanted to make very clear that this is not low-income housing, that this would be for those folks who are working in the area or wherever, but it would definitely have to fall in line with the aesthetics of the villages that surround it. Absolutely. So we did discuss that.
We don't need a co-op city.
Yeah,
That's all.
exactly.
That's
No,
really big.
no.
That's why
Mr. Cooley, you're up.
Yes, I know I am. You know, you guys are all suggesting like workforce housing. A couple of times the word public housing came up in play. I don't know that you can actually define housing for one specific group of people and then deny somebody else housing in that specific area with, you know, legally. How do you tell somebody who's not part of the workforce, well, I want to live there? So how do you designate it for what you want to do? Workforce, people working in the community, working at the
But you said you were
marketplace?
from Brooklyn. They did that all the time up there.
Yeah, well, we got away with it, didn't we? They also have rent control
It's
up
all
there.
about the union.
We can go to rent control too. All right, you ever meet a Manhattan DA that's making, you know, $150,000 a year?
In
He's
rent
living in a
control.
rent control
Yep,
apartment
yep.
for somebody who's making 10.
Yep.
You know, it was ridiculous, but he got away with it because that's the way it's all set up. You know, I just don't know how you're gonna classify one area residential one way or the other. You can't segregate one population from another to live in that area. So once you build it, whoever wants to rent there is gonna have to be able to rent. Now, whether it's workforce or it's, you know, a young college kid moving out of the house, how do you tell him no, he can't? Maybe that's what he's looking for, is low-cost housing to move out of mom and dad's place. Most of them aren't in a hurry, but, you know, I know from experience. You know, but, you know, that can't, you know, you're using the restrictive words for the house, and I don't think you can do it legally. Besides that, we don't even know if legally you can use the land for housing anyway.
Which, that's the whole idea. Yeah, we have to find that. Thank you.
We're just trying to be transparent and
Yeah.
have issues brought out so the public knows what folks are looking at.
And just, they do have ways that you can restrict those who are renting. You make requirements placed on there. Now, you're right, we can't say only people who are within a 30-foot geographic area are allowed to rent from here. You can't do that. You can't say only a family can rent here versus a single person. You can't do that either. But there's certain requirements. You'd be surprised how you can restrict by those requirements. Yeah, and then you can make those requirements on an annual basis. So, Mr. Dobrin, you're up.
Victor Dobrin, Grand Paradiso, just complimenting on that. I know in Lakewood Range, actually, there is a very rich development, and then there is a limited income. Both, it's a bracketed income, actually, and it works. And it's actually, not rule, I would say, is defined by I believe it's city of, well, I think it's a county.
I think it's the county.
County
It's the county's
resolution,
average, yeah.
correct. So anyhow,
Yeah.
Kevin brought a very good subject. We do have, and I live in Grand Paradiso because not everybody looks like me. I like to hear cries too, not good cries from kids, not from mature people like me. So, if we are following the plans of the district to get above 30,000 living units, I really don't know if we have the space to provide such as playgrounds and good park environment for young families and so forth without traveling miles and miles. So I know that the county levies on every single homeowner 25 cents for each $1,000 for park.
We'll be talking about that soon too.
Yes, so
But
I
go
mean that knowing about that, I think we can think how this, aside from housing, what is dedicated for park, how we can tap into some of that money, because these 30,000 units, which are going to pay for each $1,000 25 cents each year, and there is this is guaranteed for about 30 years. I don't know when it expires, but potentially could be renewed again. To start thinking how we can tap into that money to provide for these people who are living locally, and the density, although we have big roads and so forth, but truly organized playgrounds and so forth, it's very important for the young family. And I know our developer was very reluctant even to provide some shade for it. And you cannot bake into this summer sun. I feel sorry for these people. And I said, I'm going to do fundraising, organize races and so forth. But the builder actually said, even if you raise the money, we are not going to allow it. So that's cruel.
Wow.
So what I would say, let's think, project ourselves on this community. Will have a very average population from all points, spectrums.
Thank you.
And having that, thinking how we can tap into the money, but still provide some good opportunities for local families.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you want to weigh in on any of those comments?
Well,
I don't have my card in front of me, so I'm going to be silent on this.
Well, thank you for the points that you brought up, and actually the commission and having conversations about different things that we're trying to accomplish in your city of Northport here. We were looking at tapping into that money from the environmentally sensitive land that the voters did pass. And the challenge with that is that there's a little caveat to that. If we use that money and request the county to look at these lands and parks that we want to expand, the deal is they become the owners, that they would purchase those properties. And so when we found that out, it really, for what we need to do as a community and make those decisions here locally, that's not going to work for what we need to do. So our conversation was, we need to actually bring to the table and figure out how do we get those monies back to the communities that the taxpayers are contributing. And we are absolutely looking at that, working on that, and you'll see some conversations to try and figure out that aspect of things. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. We're on top of it, just with some of the things that we're trying to do and found this out. So
we also have the issue where they've taken the parks back that they are.
Now I need your card.
So there are a lot, let's just say that there are a lot of services that the county, by the Constitution, is supposed to be providing to the city. And as the years go by, all of those constitutional obligations are being taken away a little at a time.
From
And
municipalities and
from
providing.
correct,
To
from
the
municipalities, but still being served in the unincorporated Sarasota County area. And there is going to come a point, mark my words, when all the municipalities get together and say enough is enough and reduce our millage. But we'll see when that happens.
We're working on it, yeah. I just want to ask, Marty, with some of the areas that are being developed right now, I know there was a couple in particular that had some park lands and amenities that were quite expansive. And I just, with what was being said, I'm not sure if the residents are aware of these things, because it is going to be open to everybody, the entire public.
Yeah, I think, and that's a great question. I think one thing I'd point to as an example, we're completing a 33-acre park off of River Road that's going to be open to the public. We have a large dog park component to it. It's got roughly a mile and a half of walking trails, environmental features. In addition, at the baseball field, I know folks have said, well, you're not going to have a place to go play in the stadium. Not in the stadium, but all of the overflow parking area is being designed and elevated as play fields. So when there's not a game and those grassed areas are not being used for parking for a spring training game, it's going to ultimately be a county-owned facility, and those grassed areas will be open for a pickup ball game or soccer, lacrosse, things like that. So we've actually designed the future overflow parking areas to meet those future needs. Immediately to the north of the ball field is a 60-acre campus for elementary and middle school for Sarasota School Board that adjoins the State College of Florida. So there's some synergy between the college, the school board, and the stadium to provide those recreational opportunities, in addition to every community that's either been built or is being built is having recreational amenities built into it for the residents of those neighborhoods. The other aspect of this is there's a whole trail system, multi-use trail system throughout the entire West Villages that's being constructed as the development moves further south into the ranch, if you will.
Thank you. And I thought this was a great place to really get that out there. So the awareness is, it's smart planning again. And I think between the city's ULDC funds here in the city of Northport, we have those requirements and work with the developers and pay attention to these things. So the planning is there for.
Might I just add, Marty, maybe you have some sway in some of these different builders that you could suggest when they do these types of projects, they do need to look at shade. It's something that I would say 15 years ago we didn't do. And then over a 5 to 7 year period, we realized that that was just improper planning. And so now we make certain that any new projects, and even those that are existing, have shade and trees, and because it's excruciating outside. So
Well, we look forward to inviting you to the ribbon cutting for the new park.
depends on what time it is. If
And
it's
you-
8 o'clock in the morning, you can forget it.
We'll do it a little later then. But you'll be able to see how much of the vegetation we've retained in the park and integrating in new plantings for that area to make it more comfortable in July and August.
Excellent.
So.
Okay. All right. So,
Do you need a motion to direct the city attorney?
This is a meeting, so we can do that, correct, city attorney?
You're free to give me direction at any time.
Go ahead.
Consensus?
Perhaps it's just a consensus of the city and the district to ask our staffs, both legal and administrative.
All right, so
to review.
we'll do a consensus individually. So first, the city consensus to have our staff look at the legal ramifications and determine whether this is a possibility, and then bring us the results back, and then we can.
For the 63-acre park covenants.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any objection from the Board of Supervisors? Seeing none, similar direction.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much. We'll have a general public comment afterwards, so just start jotting notes down that I don't get to you.
Mayor, if
All
I
right.
could just, if I could share just one last item on the whole issue of workforce housing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure everyone is aware, but PGT, which is one of the larger employers in South County, and many of their workers live in Northport, actually looked at cooperating with a private builder to do some workforce rental units in Venice. That project actually didn't move forward. Did not. So I've had some recent discussions with the management of PGT, and they have an interest in working cooperatively with both of us to look at other options here in Northport. So I think from a corporate perspective that there may be corporate partners when you talk about is there a need and demand. The last time I talked to the folks at PGT, they had 70 openings in their jobs that they weren't able to fill the last hiring cycle. So they're looking for folks, and when they find them, they're looking for places initially to rent and then ultimately buy once they are established in the community. So I think it might provide an opportunity to work cooperatively with the private sector, job generation to create need. And ultimately, the idea is folks who initially start out, we all probably started out in a rental apartment or a shared unit of some sort, and ultimately saved money and were able to buy a home. So I mean, I think that works still today. So if there's a way to do a rental project that then allows folks to move into the community and then ultimately save money and develop their financial resources to be able to afford to buy a home, that it's still the American dream. So I think it's a good option. We appreciate willingness at least to look at options. I don't know if we'll be able to do it legally or what the applications may be, but at least we're looking at options.
And that's exactly fitting into the question I asked earlier, and that's awesome to take a look at.
And just so you know, that's kind of what inspired us to have this conversation in
Okay.
the first place, is when PGT, the whole conversation of that development fell through. We just had a meeting on something else and just kind of
Yeah, it wasn't even on this subject, it just came up.
So, okay, so moving on. Next is D, which is the district update on roads and traffic lights. Prado Boulevard, West Village Parkway, Playmore Road, and Tamiami Trail, West Villages. Traffic signal, I was giving you time to get your sign up.
So I'll be Vanna White or Marty Black.
How about Vanna Black?
Let's just keep you Marty Black.
Is that yin yang thing?
This is Tamiami
There's a lot more
Trail.
than that keeps them from
US
being out
41 Tamiami Trail, West Villages Parkway, the stadium's here, the college is here. Some of you may have seen yesterday, we were on ABC News. This is Prado Boulevard. It's coming into the former back entrance into Island Walk. This is Playmore Road. Prado Boulevard is under construction today. It's roughly an $8 million project that the district is undertaking. It includes improvements here at the intersection. Ultimately, DOT has said when there's enough traffic, it'll be a traffic light at this location. We've got to meet the same warrants as anyone else. This is being designed or has been designed as a 4-lane boulevard. Ultimately, it will go all the way south and come out on the west side of the Englewood Sports Complex. But it's a 4-lane divided boulevard to go through the entire West Villages property. This provides a secondary access point into the stadium area. We also have under construction, and I know the mayor and commission had a lot of concerns from the Island Walk residents. Why are we closing access to everybody except construction and emergency vehicles? Literally, this road was dug up, and we've moved it north to align with Playmore, and this is the school site that I talked about that the Sarasota County School Board owns, so that this road actually will provide an access for the school board to the south, so that between the stadium and the school board. West Villages Parkway is being extended south past the stadium. It'll be a 4-lane divided road as well, and ultimately it goes all the way through the West Villages property and comes out at the intersection of Winchester and River Road. So this road is under construction today. It's actually being filled and the road base is being installed. Stormwater facilities are being installed. The stormwater ponds are under construction. And we anticipate the road will be complete sometime around November of this year. So before the end of the year and really before season, residents all return. Same thing for this Playmore Road extension. That will also be concluded. I think when I appeared before the mayor and commission, I gave you counts on the number of trees and all that other good stuff, so I won't go into that detail.
Thank you.
The other aspect, today at our board meeting this morning, the board authorized, we're out to bid for the traffic signalization and turn lane improvements at West Villages Parkway and Tamiami Trail. We anticipate confirming that contract and signing those contracts in the next 30 days, and that traffic light will be installed again sometime around the end of the year, November timeframe. They have a signalized intersection for Tamiami Trail and West Villages Parkway.
And they'll be putting the crosswalks at the same time?
Crosswalks, the pedestrian signalization, the mast arms, the signalization will be all installed as part of that overall project. So it's been designed, it's been permitted, and we're actually waiting for the bids to come back. We have a pre-qualified list of local contractors that we use, so it gives us a little kind of a jump start. It's a little bit quicker than issuing a request for proposals, and through that we literally, once the plans are designed, engineered, and permitted, we're able to ship it to the 8 or 9 contractors who are qualified to do the work, and they all give us sealed bids, and we take the lowest qualified bid. So that's the status of kind of the overall construction pieces.
When they put in that light, is there going to be a stretch that the speed is reduced in addition to having that traffic light there?
DOT makes that decision once it looks at the traffic volume flows. We anticipate over time, though, that the speed limit will be dropped from 55 to 45 along the segment, similar to what it is within the, I'll call it the main section of the report.
First before you go lower.
Actually, I'm a proponent of slower speeds. Frankly, it's safer when folks are crossing.
Well, I was going to say,
folks can slow down and life's too short to rush around and not see things.
Is there no requirement as far as when you have a pedestrian crossing across a 4-lane roadway that the speed is a certain maximum?
Not as long as, if it's a signalized intersection, it can be a 55-mile-an-hour speed zone, and if you got a stop sign, or stoplight, not a stop sign, stoplight with pedestrian crossings in place, it can be a 55-mile-an-hour. You're not going to see them on the interstate, obviously, but you can see it elsewhere.
Well, people go like 75 miles an hour.
Yes.
Only in 30 zones.
Only in the 30 zone.
82.
One of the
Stop telling on me.
One of the other things, while I have the map up, obviously West Villages Parkway today is a 2-lane stretch, but it's been designed for 4 lanes. I know from talking with the private developer, the Mattamy Homes portion of the development, they do anticipate sometime in the next couple of years to widen that to 4 lanes as well as they move through development in and around the stadium. But we're going to go ahead and do this segment by the stadium as 4-lane today while the contractors are out there. That way it doesn't have to come back in and disrupt that area in and around that intersection.
I think we're going to find the need once the stadium, once the games are going on for people to get out. That need's going to be there.
Well, one of the things we've talked with both the sheriff's office and the city police department from a traffic control perspective, we literally then have the means to make this one way in both streets for the stadium and then one way out. So you can then we can double up the traffic much quicker. Obviously, this exit, folks in Island Walk can just continue on into Island Walk. It's a gated community. Hopefully they'll use their licensed electric vehicles / golf carts as well, or their bikes or walk. But they'll be able to drive as well.
We know they won't walk.
Yeah, we already know they won't walk.
We were just
I
being
see
aware
walkers
they
all
will
the
not
time. I
walk,
don't see this
so.
before, but I see others out there. They see me out there on my car blades, so.
That's funny.
But folks who are going to head back to the west will be able to be routed out to this location, and then you'll have an officer here to direct traffic. And then folks that are coming back in and heading up to the interstate can go across to River Road, or folks who are heading back east into town will be able to come out that location. Ultimately, there'll be other roads that connect up into here. There's a DOT has already approved in the future a future signal roughly at this location where my finger's pointing. So you'll have a traffic light about here, which is about halfway between River Road and West Villages Parkway. You'll have the signal at West Villages Parkway and Tamiami Trail. You'll have another signal at Cradle Boulevard and Tamiami Trail. And then Lennar and Pulte both have the responsibility to put in a light at their entrance to their communities.
That's the one they're working on right now, right?
And the update
Yes,
is.
and I have a bet that we'll have ours done before theirs.
That's
And
what you
every
said,
meeting
yeah.
I get asked, why are we going so quick when they're going so slow?
You're gonna shame them into it, right?
We're trying. You guys could help, though. Every time they come before you.
Oh,
go
we
flat,
do.
Ask
Oh, we
them.
do.
And I know
We
you
do.
that, but I wanted to give you the opportunity
They
to say
stopped
that.
coming, we haven't seen them for a while.
Yeah.
Next time they come, remember to ask them again. And that's, really, that does help. It puts a little pressure on them. It reminds them, just as the residents did on the cell tower and some of the other issues, folks are aware. It creates awareness, and sometimes that helps make things happen.
The eastern end, south of Tamiami Trail, will there be any exits that lead out to River Road?
Ultimately, as their development occurs, there will be.
Okay, because I was, if I remember correctly, the West Village Parkway was supposed to also end out on the southerly portion.
That's all the way down at Winchester, down in
Right.
the county section.
Yeah.
Minnesota Beach Road ultimately gets connected. It's
Right.
the existing old ranch road.
Right.
But there may be opportunities to bring additional roadways across. Keep in mind that this property here it's commonly referred to as the West Villages Office Park. It's a separate owner from the master developer in West Villages, so they have their own development plans and schedules. We're not aware that they're planning to do anything, and frankly, I think they had a death in the family a number of years ago and stopped moving forward. But that provides opportunities for additional east-west crossings whenever they come in to develop as well.
So, but they're still going to continue that one that lands out by West
That will go all the way
Winchester.
down, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Can you show me on your bigger map where that park with the housing that we gave direction on, where is that located about?
Right
Right about here.
Thank you.
See the
This is
water?
really, really small.
See the water?
Area, right. Yep, right here.
Fantastic, thank you. And Playmore might connect to Playmore off River Road at some point?
Yes, it's really, I think, part of it's a function of this West Villages Office Park. I didn't have property limits on here, but their ownership comes up to here. And this is where the county moved Playmore further south to create the separation to the intersection when these intersection improvements were made. So the master developer, Mattamy Homes, doesn't own that property. So when they develop is when there's an opportunity for that light to be installed.
Thank you.
We have two public comments, two guesses. Who are they?
Mr. Shaughnessy and Mr. Dover.
No, believe it
Oh.
or not. J.J. Corley and then Mr. Dobrin. So Mr.
Well, I think you kind of probably touched on the subject matter. As Marty Black mentioned, that his light will be in long before Lennar and Pulte get off their fat butts and do theirs.
You must have your card.
He must, you're a man of mine.
I just, life to me, I spent 35 plus years in law enforcement. 25 of that was as a major crimes detective. So life to me is black and white. There's no gray in the middle. You're either guilty or you're innocent. And right now, Lennar, Pulte are guilty. I don't know whether they're waiting for somebody to get killed at that front entrance, and then maybe they're gonna say, oh, wait a minute, we better put that light in before we suffer a liability. Yeah, okay. I honestly believe they're waiting for a fatality before they're gonna say, oh, Christ, we gotta do something, because then they're gonna be maybe late opening themselves up for liability for a suit. And I'm sure Morgan and company would be happy to jump on a, I never met such a big ambulance chaser in my life.
Right?
But, and I truly believe that Lennar honestly feels. He's the largest builder in this country, okay? He bought out WCI, he bought out Mid-Atlantic. By the time you add the numbers up, it's over $2 billion. The man's got more money than all of the people in this room put together. And he feels he doesn't have to do anything, even if you mandate it. So he says, in my opinion, I've got the power, I'll do it whenever I feel like it. And you people are not gonna tell me when I'm gonna do it. And that's the problem. Where they were gonna put the tower was supposed to be a second amenity center, another pool. We're gonna have 1,900 homes in there, we got one pool. The original plan was for 2 pools. As far as he's concerned, when he bought it, he was under no obligation to follow the original plan, which is on file here. So somebody's gotta tell them, well, maybe you should be following that. And put a pool in, or put in an amenity center, put in something for the kids. And a second pool obviously would be for the kids, because it's over in the area where they got the coach homes and the townhouses where most of the young children are living. And they need a pool close by. Moms shouldn't have to track them all the way up to the main gate, take the kids swimming, not in 90-degree weather.
Thank you. And then let me get some answers on that. I'm pretty certain they're required to follow that development concept plan that was approved through the districts.
Until it gets changed, I mean, they can obviously petition to have it changed.
Right.
But.
Oh.
Any changes that are made,
Explains it.
you know, came in front of the commission, it would have been approved.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, he cannot unilaterally decide to just not do something that's in the agreement. So, yeah, I think, and that's kind of what we explained with the cell tower part as well, is it can't just, Lennar can't just run in there and say we're gonna put one up. That's why
Right.
we give you guys all the very detailed memo of the steps that have to happen. Same steps are required to change the plans. How many of those have happened over the last 10+ years? This commission's seen several of them. You know, they're typically done in parts, but yeah, they are a public process.
Ours have really only been density, not large-scale changes to the plan, though.
And the challenge with that is, you know, because quasi judicial and the process as far as rejecting certain changes as long as they're within the usage and the percentage and so on, and it can get very challenging.
You're just not a creative thinker.
As far as, well, I'm just saying, sometimes it is difficult when a developer comes up and they're proposing and staff has gone through everything and says this request meets all of those requirements. And you risk a suit for denying them to do that. So I'm just saying that there are certain circumstances that sometimes the commission's hands are tied.
All right, next up is Mr. Dobrin.
Yeah, the change, Victor Dobrin, Grand Paradiso, it was in 2014 when Lennar took over the property. It was amended, that amendment is available on city site. Unfortunately, you know, it was voted by the, at that time, commission. I don't know who was, I was not here, but anyhow.
Not it.
That's,
We got nobody here.
yeah. Getting back to the subject of traffic light, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Lots of help we got from actually the DOT, District 1. And we are getting updates every month. And technically, Island Walk gets from their POA, correct, Paul? You were updated about that the traffic light is supposed to be starting work on September.
We usually have to push an arm through Disney.
Okay, so I get every month from a person in, which I can share with you guys too. Getting back to the roads, today in our West Village's regular meeting, well, actually it was the landowner meeting, and then discussing a draft of the budget for last year. It was shown for operation and maintenance that as a very prudent measure, the district is putting some money aside. So increasing our maintenance fees for the year to put some funds for resurfacing the roads. The roads were built almost 13, 14 years ago with bond monies, and they are defined as public roads. So technically, any citizen can drive on those roads. And when you had I'm referring for the City Commission presentation for West Villages back in, was it August? I mean, was it March? February, March?
Yeah, it wasn't that far ago.
Yeah. So it was presented the bonds for the roads. So my point is there are two things which I learned from information from Mr. Lear. That bonds we are paying, all of us, like we are the city together, everybody pays. Also, the impact fee, again, from some information, I was looking how we can use some of the impact fees and based on that information, Island Walk and us, we paid in the last 2 years impact fees for transportation improvements in the terms of $1 million contribution. So my request and, trying to work something that we can get some of that money back in some of the projects that we have to improve in our neighborhood. The public roads, not the streets in the neighborhoods, which is fully our. Yeah. So what I would like to ask maybe Mr. Wodraska and Mr. Lear can talk about this subject and then maybe bringing to you more information.
We'll have more info. I'll give you some more information there.
Sorry for being too long.
No, you're good.
So
So first of all, the impact fees cannot be used for maintaining roads. They have to be used for new roads. The impact fees that came from West Villages were actually delegated eons ago when I was here, the first run. What I was thinking. Anyways, the impact fees were used to improve that intersection of River Road and 41. The majority, what was it, 8 million?
It's a big number. I don't remember the
Yeah, it was a lot of money, but the money was used for those improvements on River Road. The other thing is the bond initiative. The bond initiative took place with a specific area and specific roadways that were part of that actual original ordinance, and that's what that bond money goes towards. So neither one of those initiatives will help in maintaining West Village District roads. I hope that helps. And go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Well, I was just gonna, since Mr. Dobrin was talking about, with the community center, that, I was just trying to not get into, that specific issue, but just sharing the challenges. And at that time, the commission could not, without risk of, the city taking on liability, could not deny the changes that were being proposed for that community center. So I was here, I was the only one of these commissioners that were on that board, and I just wanted to share that, so I recall.
Well, and also at that time, when Lennar took that over, that whole area was going bankrupt. And, good, bad, or indifferent, they saved that whole development from basically going under. Whether they've done things before or since then, you can say what we want, everybody's entitled to certain opinions. That was put through because originally those were supposed to be much larger, much more expensive homes and a lot less homes in that area. When Lennar came in there and took Grand Paradiso over, yes, the plans, the village plan was changed because there are more houses in there. It is more affordable than it was originally designed. Whether you want to call the houses in there affordable or not, we can debate that all day long. But the houses that were originally put in there were supposed to be upwards of $1 million homes. Starting at $1 million homes. And, the whole world changed in 2006-07 timeframe with the recession. That, that area, anybody that drove by it all those years saw the public sign up in that area, the coming soon, that since has faded,
Gone
overgrown,
down,
and come
fallen
down.
over, put in the burn pile.
So, I'm certainly not here in the business of trying to defend or, bash Lennar or not. Yes, there's been a lot of changes since that whole area was originally designed and
Also,
approved
like
by
I
the
said,
city
the
commission.
risks of denying something that fits.
Commission at many times is presented with things to approve without really having the ability to disapprove.
Exactly.
That happens left and right. That area was one. Commissioner McDowell is here because of another, of everybody's favorite topic of a Dollar General.
No, just her favorite topic, not the rest of us.
But the fact of the matter is,
Get that clear.
There is many times, I like to tell the commissioners that I don't bring them something to approve without them having the ability to say no, but the fact of the matter is there are times that if they do say no, the whole city is open up to liability. And that happened to have been one of them. They met the rules. So it was really
frustrating. So, Mr. Black, do you have, anything to add to the fact that there's need for road maintenance within the district? Is that what I heard?
Well, I think we took action today in a preliminary budget hearing. We've set our maximum millage rate, if you will, or assessment rate, trim rate for the district. And as part of that, we've identified for every area within the district a set aside of dollars to seed future maintenance costs to
that's
redo
smart.
those roads.
Okay.
So we've done that. The district hadn't done that historically. We took some funds that were excess operations and maintenance funds and seeded those funds and accounts. And then we've set thereby a lower rate for the residents to pay over time, so we can build those funds so that when it comes time to repave and resurface roads, whether they're in Grand Paradiso or if it's West Villages Parkway, we're not going to do a large assessment. We'll have the dollars then set aside. We asked the district engineer to analyze every road that the district owned, come up with how much remaining life there was on it, what the cost would then be estimated forward to resurface those areas and make those improvements. We divide it by the number of homes that we can
Right.
assess that benefit from that, and Todd and his folks came up with some, I think, very reasonable annual numbers that we're going to set aside then.
Well, I'm just glad you learned from the city.
I did give you guys credit this
Yeah,
morning.
did
so,
you?
yeah.
I say
I said, just
Sounds-
the way the
that
city
sounds
does.
familiar.
I did,
Honestly,
yes.
that
Those of
is
you were
a-
there, Commissioner McDowell was there, I did
It's
say
a
that. so.
beautiful, proactive way to handle it. Great job.
I
Okay,
was kind of surprised when you guys were talking about that. It was pretty cool.
next is discussion regarding the city police, fire, EMS, and code enforcement services in the district. City Manager Lear.
This was another one put on by the district. We can give them an update. I'm not exactly sure what they were looking for, but we have people from all of those areas here.
Yeah.
Well, I guess myself personally, I wanted to say thank you for the cooperation we've seen, particularly as we're doing a lot of construction activity. Both the police and fire departments have been very helpful, whether it's coordination on the Braves construction project or just general activities itself. Unfortunately, you know, folks commit crimes, they get ill, they get sick, they need to be rescued. Both departments have been very supportive and responsive within the district. And I added code enforcement because I think sometimes it gets left out.
And they
but
are
the-
there.
But
That's
they're
right.
there, the building inspection department as well, providing those services to the residents. So it was really more to, a lot of times folks don't say thank you, but we do know and do recognize that you're providing some exceptional services, and we wanted to at least publicly and formally say thank you.
Well, thank you for saying thank you, but we do have some updates. Go ahead, City Manager.
And the district has been, working with us in all of these areas of our expanding services. The commission has heard me mention recently at budget workshops as well of us expanding our fire and police services up there. Built, it would start with coordination of building fire stations, us, how that works out, the coordination with the county or not. We will eventually put a station up there. We will take, that area over because it is within the city. We will provide those services. The coordination will be worked out one way or another. Fact of the matter is, those are our residents up there as well, and we will serve them. The fire chief has been working with the county fire chief as well as Mr. Black, of trying to coordinate locations of departments, where the buildings will need to be, the size, appropriate sizes of those buildings. There are requirements of who has to build what, who has to pay for what in the agreements, and those are all being looked at continually. And like I say, you guys got the city commission got a brief update of that at the first round of the budget workshops, and we'll continue those talks. And you saw that the police department also asked to increase services up there as well. Eventually, we'll have multiple fire stations, and I believe we'll have a full-size, not full-size as in this size police station, but even though the principles of agreement call for a 1,500 square foot facility for the police department up there as a substation, again, like I said, the whole world has changed since 2006-08 timeframe when all this was started. That's not realistic. We've tried putting a substation, and it's a great place if you need to use the bathroom. Not trying to pick on anybody, but the fact of the matter is they just don't work for that far away from the main police station. We have to have a place for our guys to go. Property evidence, all of the police services that they'll need. So all of those things are being looked at, code enforcement as well. The commission has had started multiple conversations of where we may need what I like to affectionately refer to as mini city halls in our city to help serve our residents. That's not just code enforcement.
And maybe on this 63-acre park, we can take a small section and put our mini city hall there. I mean, I was Patsy when I said, and when we put it on, she was thinking, I gotta drive all the way there. But, yeah.
The fact of the matter is, we're going to need something. I mean, it's not realistic to constantly have everybody. Our city is huge. I mean, 104 square miles is no small, landmass to accomplish.
Unless you're competing with, Jacksonville.
We try not to compete with Jacksonville. We already know we're better. In fact, it's not, unrealistic to think that we need some kind of, like I said, what I refer to as a mini city hall on both ends of town, whether it be the east or the west end of town. Those are plans that the commission has talked about. It's been more than once. It's in our strategic plan conversations as well. And whether they be cohabitated near a fire and police facility, its own standalone structure, those are conversations that will come forth in years in CIP. Like I said, I have all three departments here that can address those things if you all want more of an update than that, but that was kind of my very long-winded, for me, overview of it.
It really was. I'm just gonna say, you talked an awful long time. Anyone have any questions?
I think, so there's a lot of conversations happening. And so, here again, it's kind of one of those situations with the county already having their facility and just making sure that if they're vacating at some point, that our fire department is not left holding the bag to cover the entirety of the unincorporated area there without compensation. So, it's just a very important part of this that we need to work cooperatively. And certainly, there's willingness when there's a need, but the monies have to come back to the city if we're going to take on, responsibilities. Because looking at it from our perspective, we're far removed from that area. So things are working well as the relationship is now. But if the city or the county were to leave and vacate and go further north, then basically they're creating the situation that we're trying to resolve. And they have quite a substantial area of unincorporated county.
Correct.
So.
And that area, as our fire chief likes to refer to it as no man's land, is that area between the historic part of Northport and the West Villages portion of North. There is a large amount of property in between there that is unincorporated Sarasota County. So yes, they have the responsibility for that, and they are doing that. And like I say, the fire chiefs had multiple conversations about that. We are by no means done with those conversations. They understand their responsibility, and we understand ours.
And it goes to the east too, because of those.
Oh yeah, it's not just in between.
Right.
There's all kinds of areas.
Anyone else? One thing I want to, that I forgot to kind of address was that we really need to have a deadline on that legal review for the 63-acre parcel. So, and I assume that it would be a collaboration between
We always
city and
get our
West
stuff within
Villages.
2 weeks.
Liar.
No, actually, we're not. So
2 weeks?
2 weeks, like, yeah.
Okay,
something
well,
complicated,
we
it's
have
gonna be
busier
less.
things.
That is
I
not
mean,
going to happen on our
that's
end.
not going to happen
It's
here.
right now.
So, you already put one in for 5. You want to speak twice?
Well, no, the first time was about the recreation, and since we found out that the land, basically, you guys gave it free of charge, so he can do whatever he wants with it.
Okay. All right. So, can we get some sort of legal response to that by the end of July? You sure? I don't want to put too, I mean, I know you're overwhelmed and on your deathbed and all, but I just want to, are you sure?
If I don't die before then, we can get the response.
Okay, all right. Killing me. All right. So by the end of July. And since it only takes you 2 weeks.
Mayor, are we going to have an individual meeting to discuss the findings? Is that what you're requesting by the end of July? Because we go on a break in August, and I don't think they will.
No. I just think that a memo can be sent out and then we can,
We can-
have staff
We can
work
figure
on
out
it.
if there's any action to take once we
Right,
get the facts.
Right.
I would always put it on our agenda, and then we would vote separately at each of our respective boards.
Oh, yeah, but we're so far removed from that yet, so, yeah.
We'll get you information, obviously, the city
Lot
attorney
more
mentioned she
info.
can get you. One of the things was just brought up, pending how the legal work works out,
Yeah.
it is the city's park.
Well, but, you know, it's,
Yeah.
the reason for putting a time frame on it is obviously so the board together can give some direction, right? So
No,
if
the
we
reason
can't
why
do
I
that
wanted
by a
time
memo-
frame on it was so that we actually got some information.
But you
And-
can't do anything with the information unless you have a public meeting and discuss it.
My comment was more directed of whether or not it would need to be a joint meeting.
Exactly.
Right, that's what I was saying, we can have our own
All right,
agenda
well,
item.
the idea is that by the end of July, we will get a memorandum of some sort that tells us where we are and what are the capabilities. And then, most likely in September, we will have to have that meeting so that we as a commission can make a decision on what we want to do with that park. And then that information can go to West Village District. And of course, the district staff and city staff are working together constantly.
But
So-
they can't do anything or move
I
forward with
understand
anything
that,
without
but
the commission's
I
direction.
understand, if anyone understands that, I understand that. But my point is that the district staff should have a good handle on what's going to be acceptable as a proposal and what won't. So those are the things that need to come back to us if this is even possible. So we have, this has to be, we won't see this again until September. That's my point. Okay, so for the good of the order, does the district have any topics that, or general topics that need to be brought up?
No, we have everything that we could.
No, they're pretty silent, man. I wish I was on your board.
We
Let's
do every
go-
one of our meetings in an hour or less.
Oh, you are such a show off. Oh, that is not right. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call general public comment. First is JJ Corley. I know.
I guess my comment's more or less directed to the town manager, when he mentioned that substations don't work, and he's right, because we had them up in my city, and they were just what you said, it was an outhouse. But
they're fully plumbed.
Yeah. The need for you know, not so much a substation, but maybe, I don't know whether you can call it a second headquarters or something, but you're developing this northern portion of your city very rapidly. And you got, you know, like you said, there's probably 30,000 units of housing. That certainly would warrant some consideration of another police station, holding cell, whatever, so that, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I have
you can't have these guys
For the
taking, you know, they're locking
56,000.
somebody up here, now they gotta truck them all the way down here, you know.
Oh, you
Don't
don't
put
even
them in a
know.
holding cell, you know.
You should go for a ride with this gentleman. He'll show you how far it is. He's got to go and
Yeah,
pick
well,
somebody
you know
up.
something, it's, Marty, you haven't ridden with somebody in the back of the car who's trying to spit at you, kick your car window in, or anything else.
Hey, what'd you
That
say?
young man has. Okay, so that young blood doesn't need that. He needs to be able to secure that guy in a manner as quickly as possible. Two things, it protects him, it protects the individual who's under arrest. You don't need a lawsuit for him using excessive force based on that individual's complaint. I had a name for him, but I wasn't gonna use it. You know, but at some point in time, you're gonna have to build something more than a substation, is what I'm saying. You know, they have to have facilities that can make use of it, even if it's just writing reports that's connected in downtown. I mean, it makes it a lot easier, they stay in the district. If something does pop up as an emergency, they can pop out of there and climb into their cruiser and answer the call. You got them way down here, now they got something going on in GP or Island Walk, they gotta bail out of the main building, get in their car, and I mean, I've done it, and then you gotta get to the other end of the city. It's the same with your fire personnel. I mean, they gotta be within, you know, a response time that's adequate, perhaps. and it's gonna require stations, full-size stations, not a substation.
Thank you.
And you
Thank
shall
you.
not hear from me again, Mr. Mayor.
Liar. I'm not gonna hear from you today,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
all
am
I
sure
meant.
I will hear from you again. And just for the record, I appreciate the fact that you're the one who cursed today and not me.
That is young.
That's true, it is young, yeah. Also, I just want to tell you that, Mr. Cooley, we have ride-alongs. So public is welcome to ride along with our city police department. And I was gonna say, it sounds like he's been in them enough.
Before he even catches up.
I know, but maybe you could help them. I'm just.
Oh, no.
No, huh? All right, next up is Mr. Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy.
I'm close. Shaughnessy. I thought if I said it fast, nobody would notice.
You probably do a pretty good job at that. Just a general observation. I think this is a great get-together, and I'd really like to see more of this on a regular basis. As a resident of Grand Paradiso, I think we can probably look to do more as well to engage with the community. You know, we do try. We had a meeting the other night of a couple of residents, and we talked about how do we reach out and how do we give back to the community, right? We do, by example, we support the Atwater Elementary School for the backpack program.
I know that, yeah.
Old Faith Food Bank.
Yep.
I'm one of the team members on that, and
Yep.
really happy to do that. And it's sad that we have to do that,
Yeah, no joke.
but I'm happy that we can do that, and the community really gets behind it. I think there's real value in these joint discussions, and including the community and listening, I think is a great opportunity for all of us to move forward. I'd like to find out more ways that we can engage as a community. You know, right along, that's probably pretty cool for some of the younger kids. I mean, most of my family was law enforcement. My dad was a 34-year fireman, so I have utmost respect for fire, police, and EMS. It's a tough job sometimes, and I'll curse, it's a shitty job. And a more dangerous job these days than when my family was coming up through the job. But and they do a great job. I happen to have to use your services, the police department the other day. Someone forgot how to drive and trashed my garbage cans. And the young man that showed up, it was his first day. He was in traffic enforcement, and he was very professional, did a good job, and I think he's gonna have a nice career with you guys. But just the idea that we can all get together and talk about this, I think is a very positive, and I hope that we continue that. I'd certainly like to learn more about zoning protocols and how those things work, especially given the fact that we've got some land yet that has to be allocated for a use. And if it's going to be allocated for something other than what we would like to see it as a community, I think understanding that zoning protocols would be helpful for us and helpful for you, so we're not yelling at you for stuff that you can't control, and or maybe we become aware of something that we can control and contribute. But I appreciate the opportunity. I think I'll be in touch with some folks to see how we can better educate our community on being a more positive contributor to the greater community, you know, whether it's West Villages, Northport, or Sarasota County. But we're here, we're listening, and we appreciate the fact that you have.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thank you very much.
And I think that we need to do this at least annually, if not more, as I had stated when we first started this. But the other thing is, I think that by planning a mini city hall, as the city manager had put it, I think that too will create this bond that is missing. Not that nobody's doing anything or that a bond doesn't exist, just the portion that's missing. Yeah. So I really, plus the fact that we are hiring, well, hopefully, it depends on budget, but we'll hire new officers that'll be strictly delegated to police officers, strictly delegated to the West Village district and within the district area.
That would go a long way.
So-
I mean, right now, we had a discussion with Lon today about getting a roving patrol at night because of some shenanigans, right? But nothing significant, but enough that somebody needs to come and take a look at things. And I'd rather that we contribute back to Northport and have them do it with the appropriate law enforcement to pay, you know,
Oh, I got you, security, right, a special detail, that's what that's called. Okay, excellent, thank you. Mr. Dobrin, you're up, and then after you, Paul Nynaber. That's a pretty cool last name.
He's
I
a pretty
spoke
cool
enough
guy.
today. Victor Dobrin, Grand Paradiso. Just getting back to one subject, because the mayor gave an answer that some of the impact fees are being used for that development. But doing a roughly calculation over 30,000 units at 2,000, it comes to $60 million. The part of the money would come into the city over time, of course. But I know that last year and the last 2 years was about $2 million. If that cost $8 million, so be it, we pay it back, but then there will be remaining funds. And I know that in our community, there are certain ideas which are presented maybe just as idea for improvements. Again, I don't speak about maintenance of the roads, but specific road improvements. And I think the conversation should continue, because it's not the end of the, it takes time to collect the funds, but also it takes time to plan to spend them too. So I think I just encourage that we keep engaged as we did today, and do the best to our abilities of all of us for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Mr. Nynaber. Nynaber.
Your next door neighbor, my neighbor?
I know, I said it's a cool name.
All right, Paul Nynaber, I live in Island Walk. I've also lived in the general area here for over 20 years. I think the mayor and myself were here when all of this took place with fourth quarter and the emergence of the West Villages district and the argument with the county about can you do that or not. There was a agreement that was established between the city, the West Villages district, and the fourth quarter properties, the original developer. And there are requirements in that agreement to build a fire station, combination fire station, police station, what have you, to equip it with fire trucks and other ancillary equipment. I think there was even a requirement for a police car. So that was all spelled out in the original agreement that was hammered out between the city and the then master developer. And there were dollar figures that were associated with some of that, if I remember correctly. Because of the recession, everything was put on hold and just progressed backwards and backwards and backwards. I'd like to remind, I guess, the city that you negotiated an agreement with the developer when you agreed to take on the West Villages as a district within the city. And I fully support the requirements that were in that original agreement. Okay, now times have changed, I understand that. Not my fault, not your fault, but there was an agreement. I'd like the city to keep in mind the fact that we do pay taxes to the city. There are impact fees assessed to the developer for the right to build in the area. So as you're reevaluating where you stand today in terms of a fire station, a police station, and all this other good stuff, I'd like you to keep in mind that there was an original agreement that had certain values associated with it. And if you're going to go beyond that, it shouldn't be the West Villages district's responsibility to make up that difference. It should become part of the city's responsibility. So I'd like you to have that, please, in the back of your minds. With regard to the park, the original plan of development, going back to 2005, I guess it was, there were parklands that were dedicated on that village development plan. There was land developed or dedicated towards utility services, and there was one other breakout. But there were three categories of land that were specifically called for in the plan of development, parkland being one of them, and that 63 acres was specifically identified as parkland.
Right, because that's what we decided.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Appreciate everyone from the public coming out on behalf of the district. I guess one final comment I'd suggest is, as we're looking and talking about impact fees and transportation, I know the city actually only receives a small percentage of those, because while you collect them, you don't get to keep them all. They go back to the county. So just so the residents are aware, even though there are some large numbers, a good portion of the money actually the city is required to give to the county, so it's not all kept in the city pieces. I would encourage the city to examine your impact fees. They're frankly a little low from where they are, and that may sound funny coming from a district, but it's how we pay for things as well, and how you pay for things. So taking a look at that, I've been in discussion with the fire chief and the city manager, for example, on fire and police, and the amounts of money you're collecting, take West Villages out of the picture, don't pay for those facilities. And you've got a lot of growth coming in other areas of the city. So I know there are legal requirements you have to go through, but it's probably time to relook at those, because it's been more than 10 years. So
I think we've all kind of hit on that idea.
Yeah.
So thank you for,
Still at 50%, right?
of what,
Of the original,
Was it the commission
Study.
approved back in the 2011 study? And
From the
ultimately
recession.
amended 14 when
I wasn't here
it
again.
Back in, was to adopt at 50% of the recommended rates.
Yeah.
because of the recession and stuff like that, but I don't think we've looked at it to implement.
and that may sound funny, because I wear two hats, right? I represent the private developer, but I also represent the district. But I think I was the only developer interest that appeared when the school board was reconsidering putting in place their impact fees, and spoke in favor and encouraged the school board to do that, frankly, because we know to build a healthy community, we need good infrastructure, and that's schools, it's police, it's fire. We have a school site now in West Villages. It's a 60-acre campus. That was originally a 15-acre campus, so it's
right.
larger than it was originally anticipated, so that it can accommodate an elementary and middle school. So there have been some adjustments over time, and the mayor and commission consented to that change. So there's been some acre swaps, if you will, into some categories and out of others. But thank you.
I appreciate you saying that. I thought it needed to be adjusted a couple of years ago. My question is SMH. How much land do they have there?
Just over 30 acres. It's right at the southeast corner of West Villages Parkway and Tamiami Trail, right in front of State College of Florida.
Twice of what I had heard originally. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity.
I think this is the first time that there's been a joint meeting.
It is.
absolutely, thank you.
So, but thank you for hosting.
And thank you to the
Thank you for
citizens.
asking.
And then,
To the citizens.
And thank you for letting us use the chambers when we meet. It really is, it's nice. I mean, I think the residents like coming here. We had to go down to the Englewood Sports Complex for a little while because there was some work going on here, and
Right.
it was more difficult for residents to hear us. But it's very comfortable, and I think it strengthens the relationship between the two organizations.
and we don't ever want you to have to go to Inglewood. I'm just gonna throw that, I mean, we have the Morgan Center, the Mullen Center. Listen, just give me a call next time, we'll figure something out, but don't go to Inglewood. Come on
We've
now.
been in the Morgan Center.
I was going
too.
to say, you've been to the Morgan Center for meetings before.
Of course, that was hard to hear too.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the engagement that I see from the West Villages
Yeah.
residents. Thank you all for that. I mean, it's helpful to be able to share these ideas and to see the involvement and the interest and so on. Thank you for that.
So when you get to the state, you're gonna have to change some of these county regulations to screw in the city?
We might be changing that stuff real soon here. Commissioner McDowell?
Yeah, citizens were asking about how they can be more engaged with the city. You know, as you can see, we welcome public comment throughout the meeting. Thank you for your engagement. But when we have commission meetings, you're more than welcome to come to those too. And I would say.
You're all accessible too.
I would say every single one
Absolutely.
of us are more than willing to talk with
Yep.
you, meet with you, meet with your community, meet with
Yep.
at your clubhouse, you know. I just wanted to.
Can't be a big meeting at our clubhouse.
Well.
Holds about 6, 8 people.
I just wanted to throw that out there, so thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. We're adjourned. Until next time.